Welcome, travelers. Welcome, seekers. Welcome, star seeds. Okay, so today we're going to start our new moon and eclipse series. This is going to be the first video of two, and then I may have other videos that get into personal horoscopes as well in relation to this full moon lunar eclipse that's happening this month, November 19th, 2021. And really today, putting this video out on November 4th, is really starting this cycle. Today, really at about 5:15 Eastern Standard Time, there will have been a new moon in Scorpio that will start this month off, and it will be culminating at the peak, which is the full moon. So, really, full moons is a midpoint of a new moon cycle. So, today starts the cycle with the new moon in Scorpio at 12 degrees, interestingly enough, today in Scorpio. So it's going to culminate on November 19th, and I will be talking about it in this video. And it will be happening around 3:57 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 19th. And that's when there'll be a lunar eclipse, a full moon lunar eclipse. So a very powerful full moon then will kind of make this new moon cycle really important in this year's end and ending. And the reason for that is because it's going to be the first eclipses that will be including Scorpio and Taurus. So it will be giving us a little bit of a taste of the next year and a half to come as we're ending this last year and a half cycle where we've been in a Sagittarius Gemini nodal polarity. And so we will start to see this difference and this shift. It's really going to end, I feel like, the solar eclipse that happens next month in December, around December 4th, will really end and begin the cycle. So really what we're doing now, we're getting a little sneak preview, maybe even a bit of foreshadowing of what we have to come. So I will be getting into this video a little bit further, and we'll be using intuitive guidance and insight to be interpreting the lunar eclipse that's happening in mid-November. Now, remember, even though the lunar eclipse that's happening mid-November is going to be in Taurus, we're still in this Scorpio energy as this new moon is in Scorpio, which again starts the moon cycle. And the full moon, all that does is bring it into a heightened state of awareness. And with it being in Taurus, still the opposite sign of Taurus is Scorpio. So there's still going to be that Scorpio flavor that, again, we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the year to come when the nodal points and the nodal axis points that are really calculated points that are around the moon, and when they will be shifting in January in Sagittarius and from Sagittarius and Gemini to Scorpio and Taurus. So, okay, so without further ado, here we go. Let's take a look at the lunar eclipse of November 2021 charts. Okay, so here we are with our chart for our November lunar eclipse on November 19th at 3:57 a.m. And it's happening 3:57 a.m. on Eastern Standard Time. So this is going to be where the sun is in direct opposition to the moon, right? And that's really what forms a solar eclipse. And here you'll see how close we are to the lunar node. Now, the lunar nodes, we have the south node and the north node. They've been here at Gemini and Sagittarius for the last year and a half. They're about to transit and ingress over into new signs at the very tail end of December, very start of January 2022. So essentially, they're going to be changing and shifting into a south node in Scorpio and a north node in Taurus, because the lunar nodes naturally move backwards. So although it's at 1 degree, it'll go into 0 degrees, and then it'll go up to 29 degrees of Taurus and Scorpio. Now, that's why this is an interesting lunar eclipse, because this is the first eclipse series to set that new lunar node transition off. It's going to be the first here. The last time that we had a Taurus eclipse was back in 2014, when these nodes were reversed and we had the north node go into Scorpio and the south node was in Taurus. So now we're at a different perspective of the Taurus Scorpio nodes and nodal systems. And, with that will bring an interesting new shift and change in our belief structure, our belief system, what we find to be valuable, what we find to be worthy, how we find our security. How do we value ourselves? How do we feel worthy within our lives and the things that we own, the things that we possess, our money could be coming up for review. But this is only the beginning, as the lunar nodes won't be, actually changing until January. This lunar eclipse is just a little taste of what's to come. And with lunar eclipses usually does come a energy of completions, shifts, changes, releases, right? Now I want to take a look at this 27 degrees. Okay, 27 degrees is an interesting degree point. In Sabian symbols, which sometimes I like to reference, which was really made in around 1925 by a intuitive seer, and she went through all of the different degree points and intuited their interpretation as she saw them. And in Sabian symbols, 27 degrees is a old Indian woman selling the artifacts of her tribe to passerbys. So that's an interesting imagery. When we look at Sabian symbols, it is always about imagery. It's never literal. We're not looking at old Indian women as, coming up for review now. Now, some of us don't understand, how this Indian translates in today's modern time. Is it Indian as in terms of the country India, or is it referring to native, indigenous, tribal women? Now, if you look at it either way, it can translate in terms of cultural heritage. So when we look at that, we see, well, she has something that's hers. It's really effortlessly hers, because she didn't really have to work too hard for it. So the image of her holding the artifacts that she really maybe inherited from her tribe. And this is part of maybe what defines her, defines who she is, are these material possessions. They, sometimes with Taurus tends to give us a materialization of what we can imagine. For instance, our clothing, the way we dress. Uh, Fashion is a very Taurus thing, because when we look a certain way, we represent a certain energy, a certain uh, there, there is a certain idea behind how we look that people can ascertain. For instance, if we're wearing a business suit, we're obviously maybe a professional of some sort, or if we're wearing a uniform, we're a service person, or a dress of some sort, very feeling very pretty, any of these ways that can represent how we feel or what we do, or how we value ourselves. Are we willing to buy a more expensive piece of clothing? Or do we have a closet full of, sale items? So these are all aspects of who we are in material form. Okay, so that's just one example. Now, when we think about an artifact, we could literally think about any artifact that belongs to an indigenous tribe here does represent, the culture and the heritage of the culture. Perhaps she gives it some validity that it is authentic of some sort. So, this authenticity that is associated with this object, that this object represents, perhaps it represents a very ancient indigenous tribe. And this passerby finds them to be extremely interesting, hold quite a bit of value in this passerby's mind. So is willing to pay a great deal of money for it. So at the end of the day, it's really not about, this artifact. Okay, it's about perhaps possessing some kind of perceived value and then transforming that value into a personal use. So, for instance, this passerby may buy this item from the woman and will take it home and perhaps display it somewhere. Perhaps has a museum and will display it there so others can see it. Perhaps they may even go and resell it themselves for a larger sum of money. Uh, Overall, the passerby sees the value in it on many levels. And the woman sees where it can be translated into maybe more security for her, more of a personal use. Perhaps she will use this money to feed her family or contribute to her tribe in a different way, can help translate the value of this possessing this information, this validity, this tangible proof of her tribe into something that can provide her with security. So you see, this is all, an interesting element that we can start to see. What kind of things do we possess that can be translated into a more secure, valuable possession for us? Do we possess things of value? Maybe we can reassess that and take stock of the things that we have, take stock of all of the values that we possess, and you start to understand what we can do with them, perhaps. Will they be useful in the future? Will they be useful for our children, our grandchildren, or others that come after us? So this is all something interesting to start to take a look at. Perhaps that lunar eclipse will begin to bring up. Now, the ruling planet here in the moon of Taurus is going to be Venus. And Venus also does teach us a little bit about beauty, harmony, and art. Also, value and worth as well. Venus is also the planet of money. And being here in Capricorn, this is really kind of giving us more of that practical understanding of our values, of our money, of our beauty, of our, how do we dress? Are the clothes that we own useful for us? Do they provide us with a more practical expression? Or are there, things that we own that will never be worn, that we own because they give us an intrinsic value, perhaps? So Venus always does ground it out a bit. Now, here, Venus at this degree point, there is some kind of healing through your use of elements from the earth. Anything that pertaining to nature, we maybe become more valuable now. Natural elements, natural healing. Crystals. People do buy crystals because they see them as valuable. Now, they're minerals from the earth, and they can provide certain frequencies, healing, and energetics to the different kinds of gemstones and minerals that people like to buy. I'm an avid crystal collector myself, and so is my daughter. So, when I do feel that I look around at my collection and I do feel that I own quite a valuable collection of these minerals because each one is so unique and so different. It's impossible to have two of the same crystals, two of the same gemstones, unless of course they're synthetic. And at that point that, they're not natural and they're not really valuable. So to really be valuable, they're truly from the earth. And we see this as part of this energy that may be coming up then as well. Are the crystal mines going to be very valuable? Are they going to be coming up for review then? How will we see the water, the plants, the herbs of the natural elements of nature? The spirits of nature will also be maybe speaking to us more then. So we may need to listen to them. What are they trying to tell us? How are they trying to communicate, and what are they trying to communicate? Um, Likely something that will show us how we may be expressing our value and our worth. Um, with that, with Venus making a exact trine to Uranus, also in Taurus, this can be very unexpected. What may seem like it has value all of the sudden may be very surprising. And we may find it to be very surprising. Think surprises could happen with monetary systems. Even we may see that. Now, I'm not here to bring any kind of alarm, to be an alarmist with the monetary systems coming up. We all know that there's going to be some shifts and changes to it. But the astrology does kind of give us a bit of insight into, what we can be looking at, what kinds of shifts and changes. Well, we have that Taurus, and what is it doing? Well, it's making an opposition to the moon. Okay, so when we talk about values, there's a lot going on with the moon, right? Because the moon is so emotional. So we really want to look at our emotional values, our internal beliefs, how we value ourself, how we value our experience in this world. And, I see the aspects the moon's making. We've got a square to Jupiter. So there may be an excess of needing maybe validation from a more external source, which we may need to watch out for. There's also, it has a trine to Pluto. So again, this can be, deep relationships may come up right now too. Deeper relationships or relationships in general will be an aspect of this self review. So, the relationships in our lives, do they make us feel valued? Um, Or do we put too much emphasis on expecting the relationships in our lives to make us feel valued? So there's a very fine line here between needing too much from external sources and maybe going deeper within the relationships that we already have, because that's likely to take us into the next level and step of our own evolution. So I do feel like there's a lot of emotional transformation happening here, because even as Mercury does uh, make a trine to Neptune, there is a deeper connection of a spiritual, soulful connection here. Something that really does help us understand how to communicate our higher self, how to communicate that forward, how to express that, how to express it in a way, again, where we're portraying and displaying how much we value ourselves. There's this south node near sun. It's a little bit difficult to really show our security because we tend to lack it a bit. Now, when we talk about security, again, there's material aspects of that, but what is being materialized in our life that's really more of a consequence of our internal feelings about ourselves? Because that is kind of what this is really starting to show us. And this is just maybe a little bit of an insight, again, of what we're going to be experiencing for the next year. So when we look at this, we say, well, how am I, really showing my value? What am I displaying about myself? What am I displaying about how much I value myself or not value myself, right? Like, do I have a whole closet full of clearance items that haven't even been worn yet? You know, um, Instead of maybe one very high quality, high value piece of clothing that could be worn over and over again and likely last a long time because it was high value. Really at the end of the day, how do we see ourselves? What do we buy that represents, how we view and see ourselves? Are we more willing to spend money on others than ourselves, right? Or do we spend too much on ourselves and expect others to, do what they need to get their own, in the game? But likely, this is kind of telling us we do need to understand, again, this balance between how we value ourselves and how much we look for other people to validate us, right? Um, this Uranus is doing quite a few things as it's opposing Mars. Mars is driven here to transform in Scorpio, right? And it's being done on a grand scale. While Uranus is also trining Venus, so there's likely some surprises here. Usually it's pleasant surprises with this trine to Venus, so hopefully that will be a pleasant surprise. But it's also squaring Saturn, so it's telling you, okay, well, where are your responsibilities in terms of what comes up? Do you meet someone, during this time who may, be a test of some sort? There will be a test maybe of, again, mirroring how you value yourself. They could be a mirror to you. It could be like, just someone that you randomly meet or someone likely, again, someone from an outside perspective that will give you more of that validation or that challenge that you're seeking or avoiding. So this is really interesting. It is really emotional for what's coming up in terms of how we value. And, there could be things coming up in our relationships then, right? Because of that same, after this season of Libra ended, there's been a lot of relationship things that came up with this season of Libra. And Scorpio, all that does is take relationships deeper. Libra is like meeting someone at the bar and having a great time. Then Scorpio is like, you're in a relationship with them, a couple months later, and you guys are talking about old, traumas and wounds and starting to be more vulnerable with each other. And so that's really where Scorpio is. It likes to get deep, and it needs to get deep to feel satisfied. Um, and so again, Uranus can bring in, oh, how are you valuing yourself in these relationships? Is it deep, or are your relationships falling short? And again, that reflects how you value yourself. Okay, so really the relationships are a mirror to how we do value ourselves anyway. So that's why it's important to take note either way what comes up then. So, the things that can happen during this 27-degree marking in Taurus and Scorpio is really this takes place during a really interesting time on the planet when it happens actually 2 times each year. And November 15th through the 20th, give or take a day or two on each side, is called the Pleiadian Line-Up. Now, I have a set of videos I've made about the Pleiadian workbook, where I translated the Pleiadian workbook and the meditations in them so that you can follow along with it if you haven't read that book already. But the Pleiadians are, beings that have been on the planet and have seeded the planet and work with a lot of the beings on the planet, a lot of us humans here, to help guide us. At the end of the day, we are human, even if we have been seeded, and our DNA has been altered through generations and generations. And the Pleiadians have had a hand in that. But at the end of the day, we do need to remember our humanness, because that is why we came to the planet. Now, the Pleiadians are very benevolent beings for the most part. And during this lineup, they do tend to check in on any projects or experiments that are going on the planet that does have to do with any of their more transformational projects, since this is about transformation in Scorpio. Scorpio is about transmutation, alchemy, transformation. So, this is going to be about how, again, do we transform the values that we come in with, transform the things that we have, that we possess, any of the materials we have, any of our beliefs, any of our, personal values into something where we can begin to use it for a better future, or for greater value in our life, to add greater value in our life. So, going back to the Sabian symbol that we addressed earlier in this transmission, I'm just going to end it here as well, where the Pleiadians come in and really start to witness what we have here on this planet, here in the material realm, that ultimately, can access a higher dimensional plane, that can access higher states of awareness. And this will be the beginning, again, like I said, of the year and a half to come, of this Taurus, Scorpio, North Node, South Node transition that we will be going into at the start of January. So this will be, again, just the beginning. So let's, witness what happens. And I'll meet you back here for our next video regarding the following solar eclipse that's happening in December. So bye-bye for now, and happy, I guess, Indigenous Awareness Month of November.